Good day, students, and welcome to our class. Today, we'll be looking at the topic of temperature, which is one of the elements of weather. Temperature is the degree of hotness or coldness of the atmosphere. In other words, then, how hot or how cold the atmosphere is at a particular time. It is mainly affected by latitude. For example, places near the equator are hotter compared to places near the poles. This is because places near the equator receive more sunlight than places near the poles. Therefore, temperatures are going to be different at these two latitudes. Now, temperature is measured in degrees Celsius or degree Fahrenheit, depending on where you are and your cultural orientation. So temperature is measured by a thermometer. Now, what is a thermometer? Well, here it is. Thermometers vary in design, but they all work the same. This just happened to be one such design. Now on a thermometer, the highest temperature recorded for the day is what we call the maximum temperature, and the lowest or lower temperature recorded for the day is what we call the minimum temperature. Here we have what we call a climograph. Well, each of these graphs that we see here is what we call a climograph, and it basically tells us what the temperature is like in a particular area. To take for example, on a climograph, the line represents temperature, while the bars represents rainfall. It's basically the combination of two different types of graphs, a line graph and a bar graph. Once combined, you get what is called a climograph. And it's very important because it gives us an idea what the characteristic or the climatic characteristics of an area is really like. So once again, on a climograph, the line represents temperature while the bars represent rainfall, which we'll be doing in another lesson. So let us get back to the minimum and maximum temperatures. Now here's an example of what we mean by minimum and maximum temperatures. For example, at the end of the day, the highest temperature recorded is 30 degrees Celsius. The lowest temperature recorded was 25 degrees Celsius. Therefore, 30 degrees Celsius is the maximum temperature because it is the highest temperature recorded for the entire day, while 25 degrees Celsius is the minimum temperature since it is the lowest temperature recorded during the course of the day. Now, the maximum and minimum temperatures are very important in terms of determining the diurnal temperature range, which is the difference between the maximum and minimum temperature. To achieve this, we simply subtract the minimum temperature from the maximum temperature, which will eventually give us the diurnal temperature range. For example, 30 degrees Celsius minus 25 degrees Celsius will equal 5 degrees Celsius. Therefore, the diurnal temperature range is 5 degrees Celsius. That is our diurnal or daily temperature range, which is basically the difference between the maximum and the minimum temperatures that are recorded for the day. Again, maximum and minimum temperatures are going to come into play in trying to calculate the average daily temperature, which is simply an average, as the name implies. What we're going to do is to simply add the maximum temperature to the minimum temperature, and then the total is divided by 2. That will give us the average daily temperature, or the average temperature for that particular day. To do this, we just simply add 30 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius, all divided by 2. Why 2? Because there are 2 temperatures being considered here, the maximum and the minimum. Therefore, we're going to divide by 2. When we add 30 to 20, we get 50. We then divide the 50 by 2, which will give us 25 degrees Celsius. This 25 degrees Celsius, students, is the average daily temperature, or the average temperature for that particular day. Once again, we simply add the maximum temperature to the minimum temperature. Then we divide by 2. 2 because we're only dealing with 2 temperatures, the maximum and minimum temperature. And then, after adding them, we will then divide that total by 2. The answer we get from dividing that total by 2 is our average daily temperature. All right, let's have a little fun. So here we have our table, and our table, we have location. Under location, we have several cities from across the world. Moscow in Russia, Port-au-Prince in Haiti, Bridgetown in Barbados, Nairobi in Kenya, Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. Here we have our maximum and minimum temperatures for both cities. Now, the task here is to use the information given to calculate the diurnal temperature range and the average temperature for the day. Now, you can pause this video and work out your answers, and then proceed to the next slide in order to see if you are on track. Okay, now having completed working out, if it looks something like this, you are right. This is what the table should look like. Now, let's move on to our next activity. Now we're going to calculate the annual temperature range, which is actually the difference between the minimum and maximum temperatures in the year. In other words then, it is the highest temperature recorded in the year subtracting the lowest temperature recorded in the year. It is simply the difference between the highest temperature recorded for the year and the lowest temperature recorded for the year. To accomplish this, we're just going to look at this example. Now, the highest temperature recorded for the year 2020 was 35 degrees Celsius, and the lowest temperature recorded for the same year was actually 15 degrees Celsius. To calculate the annual temperature range, we will now subtract 15 degrees Celsius from 35 degrees Celsius, since it is the minimum temperature. This working out will actually give us 20 degrees Celsius, which is the difference between the 35 and the 15 degrees Celsius. Therefore, our annual temperature range for the year 2020 will be 20 degrees Celsius. Now here we have a table. Look at it carefully. Having seen the information provided, you are then going to complete this next table. So we're going back. So now you're going to have for station A, station B, and station C, you're going to put in the highest temperature and the lowest temperature. Then you're going to calculate the annual temperature range for all 3 stations. Have fun. Thank you for joining me, everyone. Do have yourselves a lovely day.